My name's Ken Valledy. I'm a marketing guy. So my background is marketing, brand marketing. I worked in brand marketing for far too many years. Last company I worked for was Anheuser-Busch in the beer market. I did a few brand director roles there. I left the corporate world 9 years ago to set my own business up. And my aim there was to help large corporates appreciate and ultimately work with startups. And so I became a man in the middle. Roll forward to where we are now, I co-founded a company called Progressive, which helps large companies innovate and unlock new growth. And my part within that is to, as I mentioned, join our corporate clients up with the startup world. And very up-to-date news, we were bought by Anthesis Group a month ago, who are a really global ESG consultancy, sustainability consultancy. So exciting news now, part there to be part of the Anthesis Group. But in essence, I spend most of my time either chatting to large corporations and chatting to startups and trying to join the two. And I hope to continue that on a sustainability path with Anthesis and their clients going forward. Definitely growing. And when I started in the startup scene 9 years ago, the reason I started out on my own was because there wasn't a lot of large brands out there. And I was amazed by that. I think over the last 9 years, there's more interest from large corporations to come in and investigate and to work with startups. I definitely feel that COVID, even though it was an awful thing, helped that drive, because after COVID, large companies realized they couldn't rely on the status quo anymore. Things have changed, not only changed in terms of how their staff work within their businesses, but also in terms of their business itself and how it needs to adapt and innovate. And they couldn't just carry on doing the same thing. The world had been turned upside down. So we've definitely seen since COVID more large companies coming to us and saying that we need to know more now what's out there in the startup world. We want to start partnering with these new technologies and founders. So I think, to answer your question, it's got a lot better. Definitely. I still feel I go to one or two startup related events a week. I still feel there's a huge lack of corporate presence at some of these events. You will go there and there'll be fellow founders, there'll be people involved in the startup scene like me, and there'll be investors and things, but you don't generally get not the rogue, but the kind of like the corporate person mingling and being inquisitive. That might just be the events I go to, but I've not seen an increase there. But looking outside of that, more companies now are working with startups, and there's more programs that are being set up and sponsored by large companies to engage with and ultimately collaborate with startups. So I think it's going in the right direction, and long may that continue. It's tough. I mean, it is tough. I mean, if you're a founder and you want to work with a large corporation, it's not as simple as it should be. So the biggest challenge, first of all, is meeting the right person to talk to. So if you just email someone or message someone on LinkedIn who's reasonably senior in a large corporate, there's almost 100% chance nothing will happen. You may feel good when you send it out and you think, hopefully, but nothing generally happens. As I say to a lot of founders, and I apply this to myself as well, because we're always looking for new clients, you have to network, you have to go out, you have to meet people. And hopefully all of our business that's come from large corporates has come from recommendations or introductions. So I'm not saying for one moment you can't use social media platforms and LinkedIn and everything, but I wouldn't rely on it too much. I mean, you've got to meet the right person. And sometimes that's going out, talking to people about what you do. And they may not be a large corporate, but talking to people, and they may say, oh, I know someone in a large corporation you should speak to. I know someone in the brand team there. And that introduction will hopefully cut through all the noise they get from emails, LinkedIn, phone messages, etc. So the biggest challenge is meeting the right person. And I would say you have to have a varied approach to that. So yes, use technology and social media, but also get out away from your laptop and talk to people. And you'll be surprised, the more people you talk to, the more chance someone will make that introduction, which will cut straight through to the right person. So getting to the right person is one thing. The other thing I find is being very succinct about what you can offer is another. So I always say, keep what you do down to one or two sentences. And you'll better tell straight away when you talk to this person whether they're intrigued and or the right person for you to talk to. So don't go into autopilot and do 15 minutes talking about your business when after 1 minute the person's checked out. You're just wasting your own time out and there. So keep your offering very succinct and to the point. And I also think there is definitely a need to be very clear on what makes you different to other companies like yourself. And what I mean by that is a large corporate person or a business person generally hasn't got the knowledge of your environment that you have. And the way their brains work generally is to put you in pigeonholes. So if you say you are a company that can help them generate new sales on their website, they will just think, oh, it's another website piece of tech. So if you've got to be very clear what you do and why it's different to everyone else, and then that will keep them interested. So there's many challenges. I say the hardest one is getting the right person, and that involves getting up and talking to people and getting an introduction. 2 is when you meet that right person, don't blow it by over pitching and boring them to a certain extent. And 3, if you have got their attention, make sure you get that USP over to them, because sometimes they may not be the person who makes the decision, but if they get what you can do and what makes you different, those 2 sentences or pieces of information, they may take away and talk to one of their peers or their boss about, and it helps them sell what you do to them. And then they may come back and say, right, let's have a chat about how we can work together. So keep it simple. You don't meet a lot of people from the corporate world. So when you do, it's almost like time stops. This is it. This is your big moment. Your whole business, career, life depends on this. And sometimes the easy route is to oversell, because you think this is the only chance I've got, so I may as well throw the kitchen sink in and talk about everything we can do. And in the end, you end up sounding, it sounds awful, but you can end up sounding like a founder who's desperate for work and can do everything from your technology down to dry cleaning and everything. You can say you do anything for anyone just to get their attention. I think the key thing also, which people forget, is when you first talk to a corporate, they're not going to turn around to you and say, let's work together. So when you first speak to someone who you feel could be intrigued by what you're offering, your objective is to get a meeting with them. That's all you should think about, because once you get a meeting, you can plan for it. If it's face-to-face, fantastic. If not, you can still have a chat over Teams or Zoom or whatever, but you can be more planned and considered. So when you speak to someone at a networking event or randomly somewhere, your objective is to gauge very quickly whether you think they're interested, and then let you know that and try and get a meeting. Don't try and sell everything at once, because you're not going to get an answer either way. If you expect that, it's not going to happen. So, and the more you talk about what you do, the more chance they're going to say thank you very much, but no thank you. So I always take pressure off myself and see if they're intrigued, mention briefly what I do, and say, look, why don't we get a meeting where I can go through it in more detail? It's a bit quieter than here, and we can, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of startups think this is it. And if they don't say yes and write you a check or some money for a trial in that chat, it's a failure. It's not. Just try and get a meeting. You don't meet a lot of people from the corporate world. So when you do, it's almost like time stops. This is it. This is your big moment. Your whole business, career, life depends on this. And sometimes the easy route is to oversell, because you think this is the only chance I've got, so I may as well throw the kitchen sink in and talk about everything we can do. And in the end, you end up sounding, it sounds awful, but you can end up sounding like a founder who's desperate for work and can do everything from your technology down to dry cleaning and everything. You can say you do anything for anyone just to get their attention. I think the key thing also, which people forget, is when you first talk to a corporate, they're not going to turn around to you and say, let's work together. So when you first speak to someone who you feel could be intrigued by what you're offering, your objective is to get a meeting with them. That's all you should think about, because once you get a meeting, you can plan for it. If it's face-to-face, fantastic. If not, you can still have a chat over Teams or Zoom or whatever, but you can be more planned and considered. So when you speak to someone at a networking event or randomly somewhere, your objective is to gauge very quickly whether you think they're interested, and then let you know that and try and get a meeting. Don't try and sell everything at once, because you're not going to get an answer either way. If you expect sat in between hundreds of pitches where a startup will present to one of our corporate clients, and I've also overseen or managed numerous pilots between the two sides. I think the first thing is to appreciate that at the start of this relationship, it's not evenly weighted. So you've got large company, potentially big budgets, small company, new idea, innovative, but it's a bit like that. It's not even. So the key is when you first go into that meeting to a large corporation, as I mentioned before, the successful ones, the startups I see that scale up and build an ongoing relationship with a large corporate, they always pitch very well to the point and very succinct, as I mentioned earlier. They don't over pitch. They always leave time for question and answers in that pitch session, which usually gets forgotten. But if a client says, or a corporate says, you've got half an hour and I expect 15-minute pitch, 15-minute Q&A, keep to those timings. So the successful ones keep to timings. And then after the pitch, assuming they get the work, which is fantastic, and that may take a few meetings, but assuming they get the work at the end of it, the ones that succeed are the startups that show two things. One is an empathy towards the corporate. In other words, realizing that this corporate person's got many more important things in their day job than this pilot that they've got to try and get off the ground with you. It doesn't mean you're not important. It just means that they've got more career enhancing or destroying decisions to make over yours, over you and what you're going to bring. So showing empathy there, which means that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes large corporates will be a bit slower. So you've got to appreciate that's not because they don't want to work with you, just because they've got different days to you. So empathy and understanding is definitely one. So if something's not on time or a corporate hasn't delivered what they should do, say, fine, I fully understand. When do you think you're better make it by? That will be amazing. And that really helps. So one is empathy and showing some understanding. And then alongside that, it's trying to, apart from delivering what you're supposed to deliver on time and hitting expectations, the other one is being seen as a low maintenance partner, which this empathy comes with that. In other words, startup X, they're a new company. If I was a corporate now, I'm working with this startup X, they're fantastic. I've been messing them around a little bit because I'm so busy, but they've been really understanding. Their tech's great. They deliver on time, and I can just let them get on with it. They're so great. I wish everyone in our business was like them. So coming across as very mature, showing empathy and the perception of being and reality of being a low maintenance partner, because what that leads to is they more trust, you work well together, and then after the pilot, even if it doesn't work to plan, there's a good chance the corporate say, but I like working with them. They don't hassle me. They don't chase me. I was a bit slow. Maybe that did help with the results. Let's keep with them and do something else with them. So if I had to answer your question, one is show empathy. Two is build that perception of low maintenance, being a low maintenance partner. But the third one, I would argue, is to see the bigger picture. So going back to our point earlier, it's not all going to happen at once. You're not going to get $1 million check straight away. So do a pilot, then think, well, can we do another pilot, or maybe scale up with one of the other brands? But see it as a 2-year path before you get to being business as usual. So it's showing patience, which comes back to being mature. So I would say just be grown up about it. Don't let the hype get in the way and you think this is it. This is Adidas. This is Nike. This is Coke. They're going to buy us. It's going to be amazing. And by next year, we're going to be hugely successful and wealthy. You've got to see it as another client. And I think, you've got to build a relationship with them. And the final one, I'm just thinking aloud, is, and I've found it with what we do, is they don't let the brands get in the way. So what I mean is, if you're now a small founder of a small startup, scale up, and you're working with a large company, yes, it's fantastic. This large company is huge. It's got big brands and everything. Great. And that's great. But you're going to be working with 3 or 4 people. And if you see them as not equal, but as like you, they've got a job to do and they're part of a small team who reports up to other people and they've got their own needs and requirements and worries. Think about the people you're working with rather than this is Nestle, this is Nike, this is Pepsi, this is Google, whatever. If you can think about, if you can see it as working with other people towards a defined goal, that I think you've got the right mindset, rather than I am working with Google or I am working with Nike, because sometimes that can be a bit overpowering. And sometimes it also makes some founders think, right, I need to ask for big money now. That doesn't work. So being mature, really grown up about it, is the one message I would say. Of all the hundreds of pitches I've overseen, you will always get, say there's a pitch day, you'll get 5 startups coming in to pitch to a client, and one of them will get the business. There's always 1 or 2 startups that technologies fit the bill better than the other 3. And a lot of the time, those technologies don't get the pilot. They don't get the work. And the biggest 99% of the time, those founders with the perfect technology for the brief don't get the work, is because they overpitch. Almost 100%. And I know we're talking about pitches here, but that's when the relationship starts or fails. So if you have a brief where you've got half an hour, do not spend half an hour pitching, because British people are very polite generally. So at the end of it all, the corporate may have loads of questions. They get to the end of the half an hour. They've got someone else coming in next, the number 4 of the 5 coming in. And they say, oh, we had a lot of questions, but they asked one. And at the end of that, they shake hands and they say, that was really good. Love the tech. Thanks for your time. We'll be in touch. And I walk the founder back to the lift and they say, how do you think it went? And I said, well, you didn't leave enough time for questions. And most of those founders will say, but it went really well. And I say, I still think they had more questions. I go back to this client who will say, they didn't keep to time. If they can't keep to time in a pitch session, what are they going to be like when we work with them? Well, I need it Friday. I don't want them over, not hitting deadlines. They can't hit deadlines of this. What are they going to be like to work with? I had loads of questions. I didn't have time to ask those questions. So no, thank you. Next one. That's it. So one person goes up in the lift thinking that went really well. I talked forever and everyone laughed and smiled. They don't realize by the time they get out into the high street, there's a cross next to their name and the next one's coming in. So, and it's a real shame, because a lot of those technologies are fantastic for the brief, but startups over pitch. It goes back to your point. It's a natural thing. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee for success forever and a day, but the biggest reason they fall at the first hurdle is because they overtalk, overpitch, and they don't leave time for questions, because questions is where people get an idea about you, what you're like as a person, how you answer difficult questions, what kind of questions you have. This is where they think, can I work with this person going forward? The technology is good, but can I work with this founder going forward? So that's the one is that. The 2 other things that come in quite a lot is before you get the work or during you get the work, sometimes founders get a bit impatient, and going back to my earlier point, they will harass and hassle too much. So they will start saying to people, we should have had it Wednesday, you haven't heard yet. And they start almost putting a bit of pressure on the corporate. And that goes back to my point of being a high maintenance partner, and that doesn't always work. And the second one is, don't harass or hassle the corporate too much. Sometimes when founders get a feeling they're going to get the work, they then go into, I haven't heard yet. Can you tell me what's happening? I haven't heard from you yet. And then even when they're doing the pilot and the corporate's supposed to give something at a certain day to help the pilot happen, the startup will say, I haven't heard from you yet. What's happening? And all of a sudden, going back to my earlier point, the corporate thinks, oh, I can't do with this. I've got enough on my plate. So don't overpitch, don't over hassle. And the other thing I see, which doesn't always work well, is overprice. It's like, well, we're going to overprice now. You're a huge company. You must have huge budgets. So I'm going to charge the earth. It just means they say no. So think long term, keep to the point in your pitch, be mature and grown up about timings. Don't get on the back of the corporate all the time. And when you do come to pricing, think of a price that's going to obviously make money for yourself, but is going to help you build a relationship with a corporate that might lead, hopefully, to more work. And then you have the opportunity to charge more of a premium price for what you offer. But if you overprice at the start, it generally stops there and then.
Perfect. I love that. Don't overpitch, don't overhassle, and don't overprice. This should be a master class.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But it's difficult because we all get caught up. We all think this is it, it's going really well, I'm going to be cheeky. Or we panic and we think they said they're going to do the pilot, they were going to send this document for us to fill in by the end of the week, they haven't done it. Maybe they don't want to work with us. I'm gonna chase them. And they chase them on a Monday, they was chase them on a Tuesday, and you think, oh, all you're doing now is giving them 5% more reason, another 5% more reason to say, actually, we're not going to do it. Because it's almost like they will see it as you showing your true colors, you're going to harass them. So as long as you can be very polite, but still infer that you need what they got to provide, but do it in a polite way. It's very difficult to start. So you're going to get, in layman's terms, you're going to have a large company on one side and you're going to have a small company on the other. So right at the start, you've got an uneven partnership. And it's like bringing the two together on a first date. Yeah. And both have very different expectations. So our first job is to manage the initial expectations of both sides. So from a corporate side, some corporates will still think that a startup is an acne-ridden 18-year-old coding in a bedroom. That's still out there, that perception. That's obviously not true. So there is opening their eyes to the fact that there's lots of different people from different genders, races, ages, etc., who are starting and running successful businesses, and they'd be deemed as a startup, a scale up, etc. So one, the perception isn't correct. The other thing from the corporate side could be, right, we're going to get the new Google, the new Facebook, the new Microsoft, the new TikTok, the new whatever it may be, and we're going to make millions. Unfortunately, I wish I could identify those companies and bring it to our clients, but that doesn't happen either. So it's managing their expectations. That on one side, you're going to be dealing with really clever, enthusiastic, vibrant people from different backgrounds, etc. But it's going to be a bit of a journey for you as well. It's not going to happen overnight. So we have to manage the corporate expectations at the start. On the startup side, it is, as I mentioned before, on the startup side, it's one, this is a big brand, so don't expect too much at the start. And also they work very differently to you. So they're not, they're the most important thing in your mind at that time. If you're a small startup and you've got a meeting with a big brand, that is the most important meeting in your diary. And that may be the most important meeting you've had ever. To the corporate, you're one meeting of 10 in a day. So trying to say to the startup that, yes, this is a big opportunity, but you're not going to get 6 figures overnight. And 2, it's going to be a bit slower than you want it to go, but it's worth keeping in there for the long run. So even before we join the two together, we try and manage those expectations. And then once the process starts, we find this really weird hand-holding experience. So at the start of the process, generally speaking, not all our clients, but generally speaking, you're holding the hand of the corporate more. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go do some research into what's out there. We're going to tell you what the opportunities are, what the trends are. And what we're trying to do there is reassure them that they are on the right path. They're doing the right thing. There's fantastic opportunities out there. This is definitely something that is correct, and they're going to enjoy it. So we're trying to, in a nice way, reinforce that the decision they've made to work with us and delve into the startup world is the right decision. Once we find that we go through what we're finding and we introduce the corporate to some startups, generally 99.9, if not 100% of the time, they love it. It's like, wow, this is really great. These people are fantastic. Why didn't I do it earlier? This is like a different world. What's next? And we find we almost let go of the hand of the corporate. Once the corporate finds out what's happening out there, meets some startups, they're gone. It's like, wow, we're in. We want to find someone to work with. Ironically, at that part, we find we hold the hand of the startup more, because the startup now is giving more information back around the brief. They've got a chance to pitch. And now we've got to hold their hand and say, don't over pitch. As I said, don't think this is going to be $1 million check. Play it very cool. Don't push things. And let's see if we can get you that pilot at the end. So we almost hold the hand of the corporate at the first bit. Once the two meet or are going to meet, we find then we have to almost say to the corporate, you're fine. And now we have to manage the expectations of the startup more. So through the pre-pitch, pitch process, we hold the hand of the corporate, and then eventually we hold the hand of the startup. Once you get past that pitch, and let's say the corporate will pick their partner to work with, or let's forget the pitch, let's say at the start of a relationship between a corporate and a startup, they're going to work on a project together. Then I think it comes to, sometimes we're in the middle where we make sure both sides are working as much as we can to time. And the key thing there goes back to on the corporate side, I think they've got to make it as easy as they can for the startup. So they've got to try and get procurement involved, try and fast track that, maybe not overburden the startup with too many questions and like make it impossible for them to be embedded into their company to work with. So we've got to try and work with the corporate to make the journey or the process the startup has to follow in their large company as smooth as it can be. On the startup side, because now they've got the green light, they're going to work, it goes back to, right, okay, we want to get it done by the end of the month. Push where needed, but again, be low maintenance, be professional, and just, you know, be wary that things may not go exactly to time. But as long as you're seen to do your bit and be mature, then there's a very good chance the corporate will appreciate that and try and pull their weight more when needed, and you both get to where you need to get to. So we're always on both sides trying to manage that relationship and make sure that everyone's up to date with expectations and what they should or shouldn't expect at whatever point it is. We also sometimes will get a startup will come to us and say, I'm a bit afraid to ask this question. A corporate may come to us and say, look, I'm really busy, but can you tell so-and-so I need this? And we work in between the two sometimes on a very tactical, off the cuff, off the cuff daily basis. But the biggest thing is just not especially from the startup, don't overcrowd the corporate. And I think the corporate also needs to appreciate that this is a big deal for the startup. So try and make it as easy as you can for them. Appreciate that there's a lot more at stake for them than there is for you in some cases. And again, be mature about it. And I'd advise, if I had to wrap it up, I would say, if both sides take off their job titles, so the startup takes off their, I'm a founder of this company and we're amazing and I'm amazing, and the corporate takes off their, I'm a very important in the brand team, person in the brand team or the finance team, I'm a director, whatever. They take off their titles, but they're just professional people and work as if they're just working with partners in that way. Forget their baggage and their legacy and their titles. That always leads to a good outcome. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, it sounds corny, it's all about people. And if a pilot goes well, the startup benefits from that exposure to a corporate, amazing benefit. They can do case studies, they hopefully get more work with that corporate. And take my word from it, having been the other side of the table, if you're working with a startup and that goes well, that helps you as a brand. Dare I say, it helps you in your career. You look very innovative and everyone's happy. But sometimes both sides kind of want to flex their muscles a bit or to be a bit impatient. You just got to try and keep both sides this side of reality and just be patient. And then there's a good chance it will work. But patience is the biggest thing, I think, especially on the startup side. And maybe a bit more on the corporate side, it's a bit more understanding that there's a lot more at stake for the startup. So sometimes be wary of that. I think the only other thing I would say from a founder side is you're in an amazing parallel universe to a lot of corporate people. So you've started your own business, or you're in a senior place in a startup, you're on the board or a CTO, whatever it may be. That's a world that the corporate is aware of, but has never ventured into. Maybe because it's not them, they haven't got the guts to do that. So you're in a world that the corporate's trying to get their head around, as well as doing their day job. And that's a very exciting world. It's something that I'd imagine a lot of corporates would love to have done, but they've gone down the corporate path. So even though you're small, you've got this mystique, mystery, excitement about what you bring. And if you can bring that excitement to the table, and that's what got me involved in startups at the start, it was the vibrancy and positivity that they have. If you can bring that to the table, but at the same time be quite mature and grown up, I think that's a perfect mix for working with anyone, let alone a corporate. So you've got some mature professional traits about you, but also you're a very engaging, dynamic, proactive person. And most founders are like that. Most founders are very, very, very engaged and excited about opportunities and what's coming next. It's just bottling that up a little bit, keeping a lid on it and being professional, and you're off. But you hold more cards than you think, because the corporate person hasn't got the time and isn't aware of the market you live in and the world you have. And it is quite exciting. It might be stressful for the founder, but to the corporate, it's like, wow, this is different to my day job. This is different to most people I talk to. This is different to most partnerships we do with other large companies, which are quite vanilla and dry. You know, you've got this exciting world which they may want to talk about to their peers. You know, I was working with a great startup today. They're doing this, and I went to an event they were at, and it was amazing. It's like a whole new world. So you've got lots of assets and attributes and traits and experiences that mean a lot to corporates, more than you think, in terms of making you very engaging and wanting to work with as a partner. It's easier said than done, but I think there's loads of opportunity out there, loads of opportunity. More corporates now are coming to the middle to want to find out what's happening in the startup world. There's huge areas of growth. I mean, obviously ESG is a huge area as well, which this is, you know, rightly so. So I think for most startups who want to work with the corporate, one, I think even though investment is quite tight at the moment, I think there's still a lot of corporates out there who want to work with startups. I just think it's being very clear on what your offering's about. So who's your target audience? And if you want to work with a corporate to hit that target audience, like a B2B2C thing, then just think about what corporates you want to work with and how you're going to sell your product to these people, be it 1 or 2 sentences at the start. And then just be patient. You know, as I say, look on LinkedIn, go to events. I keep saying, go to network events. If you hit it off with someone at a network event, you get on really well. They may know someone in the corporate world and they give you an introduction. That saves you hours of messages and emails and everything online. So I would say the opportunity is big. I still think it's about getting out there and meeting people and looking for introductions. And I would argue when you do get that chance, keep it simple. Just think about that next meeting. Don't think about closing the deal there and then. That won't happen. And then when you do get to that next meeting, still keep it simple. Follow any timelines, follow any deadlines, keep to the point. And then if you do get from that some work, then just be very professional, show some empathy, and be that low maintenance partner. And if you do all those things, still not a guarantee, but I'd say that's all you can do. That's all you can do in your control to make that a successful ongoing partnership. And it's easier said than done. That sounds very easy, but we all do it. We all kind of slip up now and then, or overpitch, or get excited and expect too much. But just see the bigger picture. But the good thing is there's opportunity out there, but just be patient.